Okay, so we're going to talk about acting fundamentals. Now, most people describe acting as behaving truthfully under given imaginary set of circumstances. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this under sharper focus, because quite often people use phrases or statements, but they don't quite analyze them, and so a lot of misunderstanding happens. Right. So we said behaving truthfully under given imaginary set of circumstances. Let's take this word for word. Okay. Behaving. What do we mean by behavior? Well, human behavior is as a result of responding to stimuli. Okay, we're confronted by stimuli all day. That could be somebody talking to us. It could be our environment. It could be internal stimuli, for example, the need to sit down, the need to get up, the need to go to sleep. We are constantly responding to something, whether from the outside or from the inside, whether from somebody else or from a relationship with an object or animal, anything. But what's called behavior is the way we respond to what we receive. All right. Okay, let's keep that in mind. So that's what we're talking about behavior. It's about responding to what we receive. Okay. Then next word was what? Truthfully. Okay, that seems like an arbitrary word because what does truth mean? Truth means different things to different people. But most often we perceive something as truthful when we kind of get a sense that the person, in this case, the actor, is really connected to what they're dealing with, what they're responding to. So in other words, their responses to, remember the respond behavior, what we talked about earlier? So the responses to the environment, internal or external, seems to be connected and happening in that moment, in that space, at that time. It doesn't seem premeditated. It doesn't seem something that was prepared earlier. Okay? Now, we know as actors we have to prepare it earlier, so this is the trick. Although you prepare it earlier, it needs to come across as a spontaneous response. Right, so behaving truthfully under given imaginary set of circumstances. Imaginary. Okay, so what are we talking about here? All right, so in life, we respond to things because they come at us. You know, we wake up and we're constantly bombarded with various stimuli, and out of necessity and survival or whatever, we need to respond to them, and we do naturally, okay? But when you're acting, of course, all of those are manufactured. It was already written, okay? So in your imagination, you need to set that world which is full of all of this different stimuli that you're going to respond to. So remember, this is very important. It's not about acting, it's about reacting to what comes at you. So you're responding. So what becomes important, what makes it easier for you, is if you strengthen your imagination and you work with your imagination so you can commit to your imagination as if it was the truth. Now, that is the first and most important step, because once you have that commitment, then you can allow your system to respond to these imaginary circumstances, which now you have set as the truth for yourself and committed to them as if they were the truth. You can respond to those truthfully and spontaneously. You don't have to recreate them again. You have already committed that they exist, that these are the circumstances at this point in my life, and you respond to it. Okay. So, and we're talking about circumstances. So what are we talking about? What are circumstances? Again, circumstances can be broken down to lots of things. Circumstances can be considered context, as well as past history. There's a lot of things that comes under that word of circumstances. Circumstances could be literally the physical location you're in, the temperature, the weather, what happened to you before you arrived at the location, why you are in that location, who else is there, how do you feel about people that are there, how do you feel about that environment did you see. So there's a lot of things, and these are the circumstances then you will then, using your imagination, you need to set as if they are real and actual. So that statement, behaving truthfully to given imaginary set of circumstances, takes on a much more, initially anyway, takes on a much more complex life. But the whole point of what I'm talking about is to make acting simpler. So how do we make that simpler? Well, when you trace it all back, and if you notice what I've been talking about, was that acting is really about reacting. It's about using the imagination, setting something up as if it was the truth. Okay, so that becomes your world, suspending your disbelief about the artificiality of those circumstances. You see, when the audience goes to watch you, whether it's on stage or on screen, they know they're going into a theater. They know they're going to the movies, okay? But as soon as the program opens, the production opens, the play opens, or the film starts screening, immediately their imagination, their disbelief is suspended, rather. Okay, their disbelief. So they somehow, the production triggers the suspension of that disbelief through all the various elements that come into it. In the theater, the place goes dark, and we are programmed to immediately abandon ourselves to the truth of that moment. It goes dark, the lights come up on stage, different world, different set of circumstances, we buy into it. The same thing happens in the cinema, and of course it's the combination of the sound, the music, the visuals, the behavior of the characters on stage that draws us in. And so our disbelief is suspended. Now, an actor, in order to create that suspension of disbelief for the audience, needs to do that for themselves. They need to be able to suspend their own disbelief. So that's one of the aspects of performance that actors need to work on. Of course, there are a whole set of exercises that allow them to develop that ability and develop a focus and a concentration so that they can completely immerse themselves in the truth of the moment, and therefore be able to then behave spontaneously and truthfully to those imaginary set of circumstances. Now, we talked about receiving the stimuli. Another important factor is making sure that you hit the 3 R's, which is receiving, registering, and responding. This is the process that we go through in life. When somebody says something, first of all, we've got to receive it. So basically, we've got to hear it. We've got to hear those words. Then we need to register them, because we may hear the words, but is it a language we speak? Do we hear what the words mean? Do we understand what that person talked about? So yes, we've received it, but have we registered it? So registering is about fully understanding and solidifying the meaning of what we just received. Now, that could be an interpretation, but whatever, nevertheless, we have registered it. And it's only then, and only then we can respond. Okay. Now, this process may take a fraction of a second, and quite often it does. Okay. Let's say we touch something hot. Now, that's not a word from somebody else, but that's still responding to the environment. If you touch something hot suddenly by accident, okay, you respond to it within a fraction of a second, but the process is still occurred. You have still received it because your nerve endings have received it. Your brain has registered that was not something nice, and then your response is that you pulled your finger away from it. That happens for an actor constantly. That's what you have to allow that to happen, which means what? Which means you need to be open to your environment. Of course, when we're behaving in the natural world, that happens automatically because our systems are geared to do that. We know that what's happening is real. We don't question it, so we respond truthfully to that, okay? And spontaneously. But the beginning actor is in their head. They are thinking what they should be saying. They are thinking how they should be behaving. They're thinking about the scene. They're thinking or trying to maybe create this environment. We see all of that takes the spontaneity away, which means that the responses can end up looking artificial and disingenuous and not engaging. But if they have what I mentioned before, if they have the ability to create this truth and totally commit to it and allow themselves to receive, register, and respond, then their behavior will come across as truthful. We'll pick this up later and see how character comes into play when it comes to reacting and responding to the environment. Now, if you want to know more about all this stuff, check my website and set up a free consultation session, and we'll discuss it further. Thank you.